Hi everyone. So today I'm going to be talking about ESFJ, the host. So why is the ESFJ called the host? It's because they are perhaps the type most inclined to want to create an environment of positivity, of of hospitality, of a desire to welcome others around them, to create a positive space for people to enjoy themselves. So this is the most hosty, the most hospitable of all the types, the one most inclined to want to be at the center of running things for people to be enjoying themselves. And essentially, again, like with all the different types, you have the four blocks. And starting with the ego block, you have extroverted feeling and introverted sensing, which, like with the ISFP, is a combination that is about that sort of emotional positivity, about creating that nice, pleasant, friendly, enjoyable space. However, the emphasis now is more on the extroverted feeling and less on the introverted sensation. And that takes us to the dominant function, which is extroverted feeling for the ESFJ. The point about ESFJ is that it's all about their mood. It's all about the emotionality, the environment that they can influence with their emotionality. So these are types which are, unsurprisingly, often very emotional, often quite inclined to be emotionally expressive, although not always. I find less so with males. I think with men, when there's a social expectation to be less emotionally effervescent, you may find that an ESFJ may have grown up in that sort of environment. They may be less openly emotive, less hysterical, you could say. But there's a general idea for ESFJs to be very much about how are they coming across with their emotional expressions. And rather than simply blend in to their social surroundings, they're more the trendsetters. They're the ones who like to make sure everyone's having a good time, and they are putting in whatever they can to make sure that the emotion around them is a positive, friendly, exciting one. And the reason for this is that because their extroverted feeling is blocked with introverted sensation, which is so here, their auxiliary function, that flavors how the extroverted feeling manifests. It's more about being nice quality, pleasant, enjoyable. So it's not as intense as some other extroverted feeling types. It's more about people having fun and enjoying the present moment. So what you'll find is that the ESFJ setting that very positive mood, being the sort of person who wants to make sure everyone's having fun, everyone's enjoying themselves, everyone's being included. They are also working with their physical space, balancing the finer details, the bringing of different elements together in their immediate environment. They're doing that for the sake of creating that positive, friendly mood. They're doing it for the sake of making sure that people are enjoying themselves. You may think of the stereotypical example of an ESFJ being someone who makes sure that everyone is well fed, perhaps even stuffed to some degree, can be running all the different social activities and making sure that everyone is having fun around them. And in general, being this sort of very sort of maternal figure but not necessarily maternal. If it's a bloke, perhaps a bloke, but it's more of an entertainer, perhaps more of a talk show host, that kind of stereotype. The one that wants to create a positivity. Think of someone like Walt Disney as being another example of an ESFJ wanting to create the happiest place on earth. The main focus here is again this idea of creating positivity in their environment. And ESFJs are frequently very charismatic individuals, able to bring people together and create a positive consensus around them. Often very much about radiating out their sense of humor, but also these are types which, again, is no matter not being intense, it being friendly, nice, pleasant. So balanced, of nice quality. That's the main focus, I'd say, for the ego block, for the ESFJ. But now we turn to the super ego block. And this is what, rather than being strong and valued, this is what is weak and unvalued or neglected by the ESFJ. And that is, again, like with the ISFP, it is putting together extroverted thinking and introverted intuition. So again, it's that more strategic, how will things work in the long run side. And ESFJs, they're not inclined to like this aspect. They see this as sort of party pooping, getting in the way of the positivity they're trying to create. So, what you'll find for ESFJs is they're naturally quite collectivistic in their nature. They like to say yes to things. They like people to be positive and also united. And it's sort of more sort of independently critical style of extroverted thinking and introverted intuition is going to be quite off-putting to an ESFJ. Now, within this, you have the role function, which is where the ESFJ is able to adapt where there is an external need for them to do so. And ESFJs will do the factual stuff. They will do stuff that's pragmatic. They won't like letting people down. So they'll try their best to be competent, to be capable. Not because they like getting involved in all the facts and nitty-gritties of how things work. No, they like things to be exciting. They like things to be fun. For them, fun's most important. But if they are worried that the sort of the present circumstances and the mood depends on them actually being practical and competent and actually doing things effectively, they will take in that information that's needed to do that effectively. So you can think of ESFJs being often being found in even in the business environment, managing all the processes well, making sure it's effective, updating their knowledge bases where needed. Although, again, they can find themselves out of their depth in this area at times. But what really makes this difficult for an ESFJ, because they're good at managing things in the day-to-day, they're good at the more grounded aspect of practicality. It's when it's drawing on their vulnerable function, which is introverted intuition, that things get a lot more difficult. Because for ESFJs, they really struggle with this idea that there is some sort of long-term outcome, some sort of determined, end result that is inevitable, that is out of their ability to change. ESFJs are types which feel that if they simply believe enough, if they simply are enthusiastic enough, they put enough of their effort in, they can accomplish almost any of their wildest dreams. So this idea that something was never going to work is something which an ESFJ will really struggle with. And they don't like being told that something is a bad idea, something's going to lead to problems further down the line, because they don't see things in terms of the problems further down the line. ESFJs live in the moment, and they're about appreciating that moment and having fun in that moment. So they really struggle with this idea that all the different possibilities can narrow down to one outcome, and that outcome is not the positive one. So they are less inclined to listen to people, to forecasts of where things will go. They will try to preserve the optimism of trying for the best, even when that actually may be a doomed cause. And they will not see or recognize it as being that doomed cause. No, and sometimes they may simply act in a very sort of short-termist view as a result, and not like people taking away the positivity around their quite short-termist plan. So yeah, that's what I'd say about ESFJs and their super ego block. Yes, and then we turn to the super id block. This is what is valued, but is also what is weak. So ESFJs, they value introverted thinking and extroverted intuition. They like and they seek those with a theoretical understanding of how things fit together. They want to understand things in a more intellectual way rather than a strategic how things will work in the long run kind of way. So they're looking for that person who's they like brain boxes. They like people with that kind of insight to really make sense of things for them. That is very refreshing for an ESFJ to interact with. And they may be the sort of person who will go around and find very sort of smart people and bring them together and benefit from their knowledge. ESFJs have no defensiveness over their intellect. They're happy to not be the smartest or deepest person in the room. The introverted intuition vulnerable function means they often can lack that depth. They can be quite superficial, but they're happy not being the smartest person in the room. They are the showman. They are the ones which make people feel great about themselves. So when it comes to their suggestive function, that's going to be the introverted thinking. ESFJs seek introverted thinking from others. They want others to make sense of the world for them. They want people to help to set out what the key and most important priorities are. How do things fit together? What is the philosophy that should be guiding our actions and making sense of it all? An ESFJ on their own, they're very emotional a lot of the time. Their emotions, their mood, the feel, the buzz, the positive energy of a room, that's what drives them naturally. So actually detaching and thinking about what the principles and structures are to how this ought to be is not their natural go-to, but it is what they can become very enamored with when provided by others. And you may find ESFJs um, sometimes joining movements or ideologies where there is some kind of philosophy. Think of some of the ESFJs who've joined some of these more cult-like religions, such as Scientology, for instance. They can get really sucked into that sort of thing because it provides a logical clarity which they covet and really appreciate. So ESFJs often have a sort of pet philosophy, something which they've learned from someone else, which they get very excited about, and they want to get everyone excited and involved in whatever that pet philosophy might be, and they may sort of parrot very enthusiastically its underlying tenets. So yes, that's the suggestive function, and what an ESFJ wants to sort of take on and do more of themselves, though, is the extroverted intuition. That's their mobilizing function. They are types who want to become more varied, more interesting individuals, more able to be creative and find new ways of making people excited about the world. ESFJs share with ENTPs that tendency to push both extroverted intuition and extroverted feeling. So they're both very much yes people as opposed to no people. They are the most extremely yes oriented. They will say yes. Why not do this? Why? Let's not be negative. Let's not turn down um, good things. We need to be optimistic about, and we should say yes to it. So that this applies to their approach to possibilities. ESFJs will also want to expand possibilities. The problem is ESFJs lack any sense of introverted intuition. So when they use extroverted intuition, it's sort of superficial in the possibilities they come up with. They have no idea which possibilities actually have weight and which ones don't. So you may find that if an ESFJ is trying to accomplish something, what they'll end up doing is they'll plan for every single possibility that could come to mind, no matter how unlikely it might be, because they simply can't see what will inevitably happen. They only see what the possibilities are when they've developed their extroverted intuition. Nevertheless, ESFJs like to grow into people who actually allow others to flourish by actually taking a step back and allowing some of the other possibilities to bloom, not being so involved in everything all the time, but allowing possibilities, becoming more tolerant. And they ideally want to be welcoming to people of all different backgrounds, all different kinds. These are the types which are most naturally excited by the idea of diversity and inclusion. This extroverted intuition provides that inclusivity. Their idea of belonging, everyone coming together, is very much one of including all different kinds, all different points of view together in a single harmony. Um, so yes, in a way, this idea that ESFJ is perhaps the most sort of collectivistic out of all the types. You could say that ISFP and ENTP, and when I talk about INTJ as well, they are also quite collectivistic. But it's this general idea that they want everyone to come together and basically have a positive, fun time and be aligned in what they believe in, but letting in all the different differences and have that discussed and have a consensus formed where everything can be aligned. So ESFJs with that extroverted intuition become far more open-ended in who they let into their group, essentially. Um, so, having talked about that, I would like to go towards the id block. So, the id block of ESFJ, this is what is not valued, it's neglected, but it's actually strong now. So, for the ESFJ, they have the capacity to be very they're still quite very sort of socially intelligent people. They are aware of the character of others. They're aware of how to push things with others. But the key thing here is that they don't like it when things get too serious. These are types who like things to be positive and friendly and and enjoyable. So when something gets personal and harsh, they do not like that at all, and they're going to try to stop that sort of personal thing from killing the buzz of the party. Nevertheless, they understand the underlying politics of their interactions. They can get a read of people. They know how and where and how much to push someone to get what they want to do. They can engage in that side, but they'd much rather put a very positive spin on what they're doing because they want things to be nice and friendly in a sort of overt way. So that takes me to, first of all, the ignoring function, which is introverted feeling. So ESFJs, they lead with extroverted feeling. So for them, it's about the mood, the expression, what the buzz is, that group energy. They are people who perform. They're people who are about how they're coming across to all, their reputation, the positive sense they're creating. They are not types which tend to prioritize the close personal one-to-one relationships so much. They are able to read their distances with others. They're able to close that gap with others and build intimacy should they wish to. That's not usually their focus. And so they can do a lot of public facing stuff, but give less attention to their private lives as a result. It's not that it's a blind spot, not like the ENTP, and they just can't see what they're doing. ESFJs kind of know, but just less important to them compared to their public facing side. They are born for the crowd. They are not so much for the small, tight knit one to one, you could say. And so ESFJs, they definitely have a sense of their personal attitudes towards others, but they won't make that judgmental side the focus. They'd much rather talk about how to manage the mood, and if they're upset with something, they won't simply be content to talk about how they feel towards the person. They're going to want to create that into a mood. How does everyone feel about this? Because that is where values derive from the mood around them, not their personal attitudes. So that's what we're talking about introverted feeling. But also we have extroverted sensing, and that's the demonstrated function. So this is what ESFJs use very frequently. Whereas an ESFJ may utilize introverted feeling only when in service of extroverted feeling. Right? Build the close connections for the sake of helping to actually foster a more positive group mood feel, and not cause a broken relationship to disrupt the mood they're creating. When it comes to extroverted sensing, they're using this all the time. It's just in the background. ESFJs can sometimes be a bit much. They have a lot of presence, they have a lot of energy to them. And it's not that they enjoy pushing things around, it's not that they are combat or conflict oriented. It's not that they very much want to smooth over the space around them. Nevertheless, they take charge naturally and quite a lot. They almost can't help themselves. They almost can't help but press upon their surroundings with their very strong, very effervescent personalities. So you'll find that ESFJs can get sometimes unintentionally can smother what other people are doing because they just get so involved. They may seem to be running almost everything because they're getting busy with everything and trying to make things positive. So they almost do too much. They don't easily restrain that aspect of themselves because they're not seeing it in terms of a fight to be had. They just have a lot of energy and they can get things done. And they have this almost implicit belief that they can almost accomplish anything if they believe enough and if they're passionate enough that, and they have the energy to make that happen. They have the energy to keep going. They're almost indefatigable because they have both extroverted sensing and introverted sensing working together. So they keep things well sustained. They tend to live, they tend to retain their fitness even into their old age, and can tend to always keep going like a sort of energizer bunny. They just never really tire out. Even if they do want to rest, they know exactly when to rest and how much because of the introverted sensing. So they keep going, but they can often be a bit too much. Also, I'd say is that when they're in a good spot, they'll become more open, they'll become more likely to tolerate different things and allow different points of view, which is what they want to be doing. But when that doesn't work out, a more harsh authoritarian side can come out. And ESFJs can be quite tough and quite commanding if they lose their temper. And if they lose their temper, my goodness, that can be very scary for an ESFJ. You see a very you see a very sort of aggressive side in those rare moments. So yes, that's what I say about extroverted sensing for an ESFJ. Anyway, that's the host. That's ESFJ. If you'd like to learn more, that to explore the other types, I'm releasing the other types in terms of my Explain Correctly series. But if you want to learn more about socionics in general, the only place you're going to get a full enough understanding of socionics is by taking my course. And if you want to learn more about my course, which goes into 12 different modules, well, there's a video just following next, which should, if you click on the screen, you'll be able to find that quite quickly. But also, if you want me to answer any other questions, please feel free to email me at worldsocionics@hotmail.com. Anyway, thank you everyone for tuning in. All the best. Bye-bye.